Imagine a foreign defense contractor just landing on a coastal shoreline.
Okay.
And they don't just ask to build a port or, a warehouse. They actually bring their own judges.
Wow.
Yeah, they employ local citizens under their own private laws. They mint wealth, fund wars, and essentially they put the local king's military on a permanent subscription model.
Right, which sounds incredibly modern.
Exactly. We tend to think of the multinational, untouchable megacorporation as a strictly modern invention, right?
Yeah.
Something born in, I don't know, glass skyscrapers or Silicon Valley campuses.
Yeah.
But if you look at medieval South India, you find a historical landscape that is completely dominated by a maritime syndicate that did exactly this, like 1,000 years ago.
It really challenges everything we assume about medieval global trade,
It does.
Because we were talking about the Anjuvanam, and this was a completely autonomous corporate entity operating on the Malabar and Coromandel coasts.
Made up entirely of foreign origin merchants,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly. Jews, Syrian Christians, Muslims, Zoroastrians. They functioned as a literal state within a state.
And for you listening today, this isn't just a niche history lesson. The Anjuvanam provides an incredibly detailed blueprint of globalization.
Yeah, really does.
Because this conglomerate negotiated directly with sovereign monarchs, they controlled global supply chains and operated way beyond the reach of traditional government oversight.
Which mirrors the exact debates we're having right now about massive tech monopolies or private military companies.
Right. But to even understand how a foreign syndicate gets that kind of power, we have to look at what they called themselves. Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
Because the name Anjuvanam itself was a mystery for a really long time. There was this older historical theory that it meant the fifth Varna.
Right. And the logic behind that older theory, it made sense on the surface.
Right, because of the caste system.
Yeah, you have the traditional Hindu caste system with its four main tiers: Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. So because these foreign traders were wealthy and influential, but, definitively outside the local religious and social hierarchy, early historians just assumed the locals invented a new category for them.
Like an Anjuvanam or a fifth caste.
Exactly, to essentially pigeonhole these wealthy outsiders into the existing social framework.
But modern epigraphical scholarship, specifically the work of historians like Y. Subbarayalu, who actually looked at the stone and copper inscriptions, completely debunked that.
Yeah, they did.
The word isn't Sanskrit or Tamil at all, it's Persian.
Yeah, the true root is the Persian word anjuman, which translates to an association, an assembly, or a corporation.
Which is wild.
It is. And the linguistic footprint they left across the Indian Peninsula is just remarkable.
Yeah, because when you look at medieval records in different linguistic zones, you see the word morphing to fit the local tongue, right?
Exactly. In Canada and Telugu inscriptions, the guild is recorded as Hanjamana. Over on the Konkan coast, it shows up as Hamamana. And that Persian root proves their organizational structure was imported. It was heavily influenced by the sophisticated commercial practices of the Sassanid and Abbasid empires.
Who were already operating massive trade networks across the Indian Ocean.
Right.
But wait, I'm stuck on this language adaptation thing. Like, if you're comparing them to modern expat networking groups or chambers of commerce, if these merchants were so wealthy and powerful that they were acting like a sovereign entity, why wouldn't they just force the locals to learn their terminology?
That's a great question.
Why change their own corporate name to fit Telugu or Canada syntax? Doesn't that sort of dilute their brand?
Well, it goes much deeper than just branding. Language tracking capital means they were actively rewriting the local economic DNA.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, adapting the Persian word into Dravidian syntax wasn't a sign of weakness. It was a strategy for institutional permanence. They were signaling that they weren't just, seasonal sailors who cacked up when the monsoon shifted.
Right, they were there to stay.
Exactly. Embedding their corporate title into the local grammar meant their legal and economic frameworks became a permanent fixture of the regional administration.
So they write themselves into the local operating system, basically.
Perfectly put.
And we actually have the original corporate charter that proves how deeply they integrated, because in the year 849 CE, we get the Quilon Syrian copper plates.
Also known as the Terisapelli plates.
Right. And this is the oldest available inscription from the medieval Chera dynasty. The Chera king, Stanu Ravivarma, acting through a local chieftain, grants these sweeping privileges.
To a Syrian Christian merchant magnate named Maruvan Sapir Iso.
Yes. And the stated goal of the charter is to establish and maintain a church, the Tersapalli, in the port city of Kollam.
What's fascinating here is the physical evidence of the guild's cosmopolitan identity on these plates. It's staggering.
Tell me about the signatures.
Yeah, so if you examine the fifth copper plate, you find the signatures of the witnesses who ratified the agreement. And they're inscribed in three distinct scripts. You have Arabic, written in the Kufic script, representing the Muslim merchants.
Wow.
You have Middle Persian, written in cursive Pahlavi for the Zoroastrian traders. And you have Judeo-Persian, written in standard square Hebrew for the Jewish traders.
Hold on, so if I am looking at this copper plate, it literally looks like a medieval Rosetta Stone.
It basically is.
They needed all three alphabets just to get a local port contract signed.
They did, because the Anjuvanam function is a neutral, overarching umbrella.
Right.
West Asian migrants could coordinate their financial interests under this syndicate completely, regardless of their specific religious affiliations back home.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Muslims, Zoroastrians, and Jews were unified by their shared status as maritime specialists.
So the multilingual signatures basically prove to the Cherokee that the entire unified weight of the global Indian Ocean trade network was backing this specific venture in Kollam. But the level of power handed over in these plates is just wild. Because the Anjuvanam, alongside a local indigenous guild called the Managram, were appointed as joint protectors of the church.
And its surrounding lands.
Right. As long as the world, the moon, and the sun endure, that is permanent, hereditary corporate rule.
Yeah, it's unprecedented.
They were granted complete judicial autonomy. The guild elders, who were called the Paliar, could investigate offenses themselves.
Entirely bypassing local law enforcement.
And they were granted physical control over human labor. The plates explicitly assign specific families of laborers directly to the merchant settlement.
Right, the Vellers for agriculture.
Yep, the Thachar for carpentry and the Aruviar for salt making. This isn't just a tax break for a business.
No, not at all.
This is like a government letting a foreign defense contractor build and legally rule their own corporate city. Why would a king do that?
Well, the king effectively traded administrative control for rapid economic development. Medieval states face a harsh reality. They desperately needed world-class ports to generate wealth, but they completely lacked the specialized engineering knowledge and the international shipping connections to build and manage them.
So they outsourced it.
Exactly. The Chera state empowered the Anjuvanam because doing so bypassed their own sluggish state bureaucracy.
Oh, I see.
By handing the guild total control over local artisans and builders, the merchants could construct the massive warehouses, the residential quarters, and the deep-water infrastructure needed to attract global shipping.
At like an unprecedented speed.
Yes.
But handing over legal immunity and a few carpenters is one thing. Here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
To understand why a king would eventually elevate a foreign merchant to native royalty, we have to look forward to the year 1000 CE.
Right, the Jewish copper plates of Cochin.
Yes. King Bhaskara Ravivarman grants a Jewish merchant leader named Joseph Rabban not just the standard guild rights, but 72 proprietary privileges.
Honors that were usually strictly reserved for the highest-ranking native nobles.
Exactly. So what was happening on the kingdom's borders to cause this?
The geopolitical backdrop here is critical. The Chera state was facing a massive existential military threat from the expanding Chola Empire.
Specifically under the rulers Rajaraja I and Rajendra I, right?
Correct. The Cheras were fighting a desperate war for survival. So historians infer that handing 72 royal privileges to the Jewish merchant community was a calculated reward for the Anjuvanam's massive financial backing.
Like they were the central bank keeping the Chera military machine afloat.
Exactly.
And the privileges they got in return sound almost mythical, but they were highly functional status symbols.
Yeah, they were very specific.
Joseph Rabban is granted the right to a day lamp,
Yeah.
the Pakal Valaku. He gets the right to be carried in a palanquin, the right to walk on special cloth spreads so his feet don't touch the dirt,
Right.
and the right to have the Viduga drum and heroic bugles announce his arrival.
Well, in the hyper-stratified, visually driven society of medieval Kerala, a day lamp wasn't about seeing in the dark.
Right, obviously.
Burning expensive oil in broad daylight was a deliberate, conspicuous consumption of wealth. It signaled a total surplus of resources.
Wow.
These public markers instantly communicated to the local populace and to rival lords that Joseph Rabban was legally and socially untouchable.
And more importantly, these 72 privileges were hereditary.
Yes, they were.
Which brings up the most fascinating detail about these specific plates. They are written in Old Malayalam, and they refer to Joseph Reban as Isapu Irapan.
His Hebrew name is completely localized.
Yes. And the plates specifically acknowledge the regional matrilineal inheritance system known as the Marumakatadam.
Right.
But I need you to explain how that actually works, because if you have a foreign, traditionally patriarchal Jewish merchant, how does he slot into a system where wealth passes down the female line?
It seems counterintuitive, right?
Yeah. Why would he agree to that? Are they trying to erase their foreign identity or weaponize local customs to create this untouchable merchant noble dynasty?
It's definitely the latter. Tracing descent and inheriting property through the sisters line, which is the core of the Maru Makatayam system, was the bedrock of the local aristocratic power structure in Kerala.
Okay.
If Joseph Rabban kept his wealth strictly within a foreign patriarchal structure, his assets would always be viewed by local rival lords as alien.
Like transient wealth, ripe for the taking the moment the king looked away?
Exactly. By funneling his acquired nobility and guild leadership through his sister's sons, he anchored his dynasty into the native legal framework.
So he isn't blending in, he is exploiting the local legal code to make his family bulletproof.
Yes.
If a rival lord tries to seize his assets, they aren't attacking a foreign merchant anymore. They are attacking a legally recognized native noble family operating under Kerala's own sacred inheritance laws.
He essentially weaponized assimilation to become the autonomous ruler of the city of Moidokoti.
That is brilliant.
He controlled the merchant quarter, levied his own taxes, and governed the economic lifeblood of the city with absolute impunity.
But to finance an entire kingdom's war effort, you need unbelievable amounts of capital.
Oh, massive amounts.
And we know while inland local guilds like the Manogram were gathering raw materials and textiles inland, the Anjuvanam ruled the high seas.
Yes, they did.
And their ultimate monopoly, the commodity that gave them supreme leverage over these kings, was horses.
Right. The equine economy is the hidden engine of medieval Indian history.
The hidden engine. I love that.
It really was. The South Indian kingdoms, the Cheras, the Pandyas, the Cholas, based their entire military strategy on mass cavalry.
Right.
But the physical environment of South India was catastrophically bad for breeding high-quality war horses.
Why couldn't they breed them, though? We are talking about massive empires with unlimited resources. They can build towering temples, but they can't raise a horse.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it really comes down to climate and biology.
Okay.
South India's extreme humidity, the heavy monsoon rains, and the lack of vast, dry pasture lands led to rampant hoof diseases.
Oh, gross. But that makes sense.
Yeah, and the local grasses lacked the specific mineral nutrients required to build strong bone density in foals.
Ah, I see.
So Arabian and Persian horses simply couldn't survive long-term in that environment, let alone breed a healthy second generation.
So a king buys 10,000 expensive war horses, and within a year or two, half of them are dead from hoof rot or tropical disease.
Exactly. It creates the ultimate captive market.
The kings are completely dependent on importing new horses every single year. But why couldn't the local kings just build ships and buy the horses themselves?
They couldn't, because the local kings completely lacked the diplomatic, cultural, and linguistic network required to negotiate in the massive horse markets of Iraq, Syria, and Khorasan.
Right, of course.
The Anjuvanam held the exclusive vendor contract. They controlled the Arabic and Persian-speaking agents who sourced the animals, the specialized ships required to transport live horses across the Indian Ocean, and the port infrastructure in India to receive them.
They essentially held a monopoly on the medieval military-industrial complex.
They put entire empires on a subscription model for their own defense.
That is wild. And contemporary travels like Marco Polo actually wrote about this, didn't they?
Marveling at the sheer volume of horses arriving annually at Coromandel coast ports like Kayalpattinam.
And the legacy of this specific monopoly is so deep that even today in Kayalpattinam, the oldest street is named Paramar.
Right.
Pari meaning horse, and Mar meaning exchange or sales. 1,000 years later, the street sign still points to the corporate headquarters of the horse monopoly.
It's amazing. And the immense capital generated from the horse trade allowed them to expand their portfolio.
What else were they trading?
Well, they exported Malabar pepper, ginger, cardamom, and highly prized pearls from the Gulf of Mannar out to Rome and China.
Okay.
And they imported Mediterranean wines, copper, and Javanese aromatics like frankincense. They even expanded as far as Siam and Indonesia.
They even introduced the Palava script there, right?
Yes, they did.
And this immense wealth eventually led them into a massive corporate merger, because by the 10th century, the Anjuvanam essentially became the specialized maritime high seas division of an even larger trans-regional conglomerate known as the Ayavol 500.
Right. The Ayavol 500 was an incredibly powerful inland syndicate.
Okay.
This merger allowed for a completely standardized commercial environment across vast territories.
Yeah.
The Ayavol handled the broad political lobbying,
Mm-hmm.
financed inland temple constructions, provided loans to kings, and even maintained their own standing armies of mercenaries to protect the supply chains.
And the Anjuvanam integrated into this as the elite navigating wing, bringing in the exotic ocean freight and West Asian capital that fueled the entire operation. So
Exactly.
you have this mega corporation, they are financing wars, they have standing armies, they control the global supply of war horses and spices, they are legally immune from local prosecution.
Right.
Where did they go? If they were a state within a state and that powerful, why aren't we buying our cars or our electronics from the modern descendant of the Anjuvanam today?
Well, the decline of the Anjuvanam is a masterclass in the dangers of monopolistic complacency.
Okay, tell me about it.
Their unraveling began in the 14th century, and it was driven by three compounding factors.
Not just one massive war, then.
No, not at all. First, the political landscape shifted dramatically. New, highly centralized empires emerged, specifically the Vijayanagara Empire.
Right.
Unlike the older fragmented kingdoms, Vijayanagara built a massive, robust state bureaucracy. They developed the administrative capacity to manage their own ports and taxation.
So they simply no longer needed to outsource their economic infrastructure to an autonomous foreign guild.
Exactly.
The state finally figured out how to do it themselves and cut out the middleman.
Yes.
But that wouldn't necessarily destroy a guild with a global shipping fleet. What was the second factor?
The arrival of the Portuguese and other European maritime powers in the late 15th century.
Ah.
The Anjuvanam had operated for centuries under a system of shared norms, diplomatic agreements, and mutual profitability in the Indian Ocean.
Right.
The Portuguese arrived with a completely different model: embryonic capitalism enforced by extreme naval violence.
Wow.
They weren't interested in negotiating local port taxes. They wanted total hostile domination of the sea routes.
Which exposes the third and probably most fatal factor, the Anjuvanam's own refusal to adapt.
Yes.
It's like a legacy tech monopoly like Blockbuster failing to adapt to streaming. They fell into the classic monopoly trap.
They really did.
They had the monopoly. They spent centuries building an incredible legal moat around their business, but they completely forgot how to swim.
Precisely.
They were so comfortable resting on their hereditary privileges and ancient copper plate charters that they failed to innovate.
Right.
When the Portuguese arrived with advanced hull construction techniques and heavy shipborne cannons, the Anjuvanam were still sailing traditional vessels.
Which made them sitting ducks for European early capitalists.
Exactly. A copper plate granting you a day lamp and judicial immunity doesn't stop a cannonball. They gate-kept their membership, stuck to the old ways, and were utterly decimated by a more aggressive technological force.
But this raises an important question.
What's that?
When a conglomerate that massive dissolves, what happens to the thousands of people who operated under its umbrella? The administrators, the sailors, the families who had lived in these port cities for generations?
Right, because they don't just pack up and sail back to the Middle East after living in South India for 500 years.
Exactly the opposite. As the formal guild structure evaporated, its members seamlessly dissolved into the local population.
They became the modern demographic fabric of South India.
Yes. The Muslim families of the Anjuvanam merged with local converts and other Arab settlers to form the massive Mappila community in Kerala and the Ravuthar community in Tamil Nadu.
Wow.
And fascinatingly, the Ravuthars maintained their ancestral link to the equine economy, continuing as specialized horse trainers and cavalrymen for centuries after the guild fell.
That continuity is incredible. The corporation dies, but the specialized skill set survives in the local bloodline.
Amazing.
What happened to the Christian and Jewish merchants?
The Christian families associated with the guild remained firmly rooted as the Nasrani or Syrian Christians.
Okay.
They preserved the original rights and the social standing granted in the Quilon copper plates deeply within their church institutions.
And the Jewish families.
The Jewish families established by Joseph Rabban formed the core of the Cochin Jews. For countless generations, they guarded those original Jewish copper plates not just as a museum piece, but as their literal binding settlement deed in India.
So what does this all mean for you, listening to this deep dive?
Yeah, what's the takeaway?
Well, the journey of the Anjuvanam is a powerful reminder that history is rarely as simple as, feudal lords taxing peasant farmers.
Definitely not.
This was a socio-economic powerhouse that bridged West Asia and India. They designed port cities from scratch, financed desperate wars, and permanently altered the cultural and demographic DNA of Kerala and Tamil Nadu.
Absolutely.
Whenever you open the news today and read about modern companies acting larger than sovereign nations, negotiating directly with governments, building their own corporate infrastructure, dictating the rules of global communication, remember that the Anjuvanam executed that exact playbook 1,000 years ago.
And their history leaves us with a stark warning, actually.
How so?
The Anjuvanam survived for centuries because they provided an essential, highly specialized service. But their ultimate demise came from an arrogant failure to innovate and a stubborn reliance on exclusive, hereditary power.
Right.
So if a thousand-year-old state within a state could fall simply because it stopped adapting its technology and gatekept its membership, what does that mean for the untouchable tech and corporate monopolies ruling our world today?
It really makes you wonder which of today's untouchable giants is just sitting behind a legal moat, completely unprepared for the next technological cannonball. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the surprisingly corporate waters of medieval history. Take these insights with you and keep questioning the narratives of the past. We will catch you next time.